Hi, welcome to Mindful Yoga. In today's session, we're going to talk about the upward moving energy in the body, known to yogis as udana vayu, an upward moving air. Specifically, we're going to focus on the sternum and how the sternum has a role in releasing the spine when we use the mid-sternum and relaxing the throat and directing the relationship of the chest to the different parts of the spine. So let's get started with a breath, as we usually do, a breath to open and relax us. This is an udana breath, a breath of that positive energy, that upward moving energy that allows our body to grow, to stand, to speak, and to make an effort. It helps us to unfold into life. We'll breathe into the mouth. Let your gaze be soft. Breathe into the mouth with the mouth open, which we don't usually do. Pause for a moment, holding the breath, and then we'll let a chant of Om issue from our mouth, going out towards the horizon like a ball of light. So inhaling into the mouth, hold, Om. Inhale. Om. And one more time. Inhale. Om. Now bring your attention to the sternum. The sternum is a place of communication among the chest, the arms, the neck, and particularly with the spine. At the top of the sternum, there's a connection with the cervical, the neck spine, and the mid-spine in the back. And at the bottom of the sternum, the diaphragm actually connects that tail of the sternum with the lower part of the thoracic or mid-spine and the lumbar spine in the lower part of the back. The sternum consists of three parts. A top part, which can remain relaxed, comes down to the second rib. And then a mid part that extends for most of the sternum to the second, third, and fourth ribs. And it's this mid-sternum, then when we say lead with the chest, that's the part we want to lead with, while relaxing down through the jaw and the throat and down into these muscles behind the collarbone. So Don Moyer, as he talks about this, talks about eyes of the shoulders that are just below the mid-collarbone on each side. And these should remain relaxed. And that can be done by relaxing down through jaws and throat and down into the collarbone. Then there's a tail on the sternum, which turns in towards the navel or up away from the navel. And we'll be working with that today. Let's remove anything that's high underneath us. For this practice today, if you have 2 blocks or 2 thick books and a blanket, it will be helpful, but not absolutely necessary. So you can totally do this session without those. Let's sit for a moment and extend our legs out in front in Dandasana. First, just enjoying that stretch out through the backs of the legs, up through the spine. Bring the hands back behind you, press down with the hands, and lift up through the spine. Breathe into the sternum and the lower rib cage, feeling that opening as the mid-sternum, not the upper part so much, but the middle part of the sternum expands, and the rib cage expands as you come out from the tail of the sternum all the way out through the rib cage. Let's have one more breath here. So breathing in through the mid-sternum, let gaze rise. Mid-sternum rises just a bit, but let the jaw be relaxed. Then bring both arms over as if you were swimming with both arms for forward towards the feet, and then coming back. As you open through the mid-sternum, notice how that bottom part of the sternum pulls away from the navel. And then as you bring the arms over, stretching through the shoulders, notice how the tail of the sternum goes down towards the navel. Inhale, mid-sternum, relax through jaw and throat. And exhale, let the tail of the sternum come back towards the navel, back towards the spine. And all of this relaxation through the jaw and the throat allows your shoulder girdle to relax a bit. Mid-sternum leads so that the chest is very open. And then this bottom part of the sternum, the tail here, goes back and forth, releasing the relationship with the spine in the lower part of the back. Let's do a shoulder shrug now. Bring the shoulders up towards the ears. Hold for a moment. And then let them come down. Relaxing eyes, chin, the back of the neck, down through the throat. And once again, shrug up, using those muscles to bring the shoulder blades up. Everything comes down. Feel the relaxation coming down the throat, through the back of the collarbone, jaw. And one last time, coming up, using your muscles, contracting, and then letting everything go. Bring the attention once again to the mid-sternum. Breathe through the mid-sternum. Nice full breath down into the rib cage and let it out. Join me in a side bend. All parts of the body connected with each other. If we're opening up the upward movement in the body through the chest and up through the throat, then the sides of the body also need to be open. One more time in each direction. Coming back through middle, we'll just turn gently with a hand to the opposite knee and the other hand back behind. Just turn to the side, beginning to spiral open with the chest and the spine. As I said, working with the sternum releases the spine. So we want to loosen it up a bit, bringing some spiral movement to the spine so that it will be ready to release as we breathe through that mid-sternum. Relax through the jaw and throat. Now we'll come to a lying position. Removing the blanket if you've had it underneath you. Feel the mat, the floor, the earth underneath you. Then bring your fingers up to feel that sternum. It's a little easier to feel when you're lying down. You can feel that the very upper part, just under that divot in the bottom of your throat, has a cartilage relationship with the rest of the sternum and is a little lower. That's the part we want to keep relaxed. Then as your fingers run down, feeling the connection of the sternum to the second, third, and fourth ribs, you feel that length of the breastplate, the breastbone, the sternum. And this is the part that we're calling mid-sternum, and we want to open up. Then at the very bottom, between the place where the ribs divide from each other, you'll feel a tail. This is called the xiphoid process. I'm just calling it the tail of the sternum. And it is what reaches down towards the navel. You can feel it quite level with the navel now. Lying here, we don't want it to be popping up, but pretty level with the navel. It might separate more as we do back bends away from the navel and let it come down towards the spine, towards the navel when we do forward folds. Bring one ankle up to the opposite thigh with the ankle just above the knee. Let the hand of the bent knee in the figure 4 position The palm of the hand comes to the inner thigh and presses gently against the inner thigh. Relax now down through that thigh, through the hips, through the abdominal wall, as the psoas stretches out, the psoas being the muscle that goes from the hip to the lower spine and often becomes quite tense. At the same time, let's take an ujjayi breath, breathing down the back of the throat as you contract, opening up through the mid-sternum and the lower rib cage. Then breathing out with a ocean-sounding breath of ujjayi. Lifting up through the mid-sternum, relaxing through the jaw, even as you contract through the back of the throat. Then we'll shift sides. We bring the other ankle up onto the thigh of the other foot, and the flat of the palm of the hand comes against the inner thigh of that figure 4 leg. Again, relaxing down through the hips, through the abdomen, allowing the psoas muscle from hip to lower spine relax. Come back to that ujjayi breath that brings the energy up in the body, relaxes through the jaw, opens through the mid-sternum and the lower rib cage. Imagine that tail of the sternum radiating out like a sun within you, allowing the ribs to expand around it. One more breath. Bring the soles of the feet together. Knees are separating. Hands are loosely on the knees to begin. Raise the head, tuck the chin into that indentation at the bottom of the throat. Bring the hands to the ankles or perhaps around the toes. Let the knees separate. Then push with the feet and the legs down towards the bottom of the mat, making the arms like suspension cords between the toes and the shoulders. Push down. Notice how the tail of the sternum has gone down towards the navel quite naturally. And rest back for a moment. We'll do that one more time. Raise the head and shoulders, tuck the chin, push down through toes and legs. Notice that release in the lower spine as this tail of the sternum turns in. Relax down through shoulders and jaw and throat. And come back. Stretch legs out now. We're going to come into fish. Arms are close along the sides of the body, and the palms are down with thumbs tucked under the hips. Begin to press into the hips along the forearms and the elbows as the back of the head slides up. Feel the energy coming up from the tailbone, up through the navel. The tail of the sternum separates away, and mid-sternum is broad. Relax jaw and throat, and down through the collarbone. And slide back down. Take a breath. Then pushing once again into hips, elbows, and forearms. Slide on the back of the head. Let the energy come from the tailbone up through the mid-spine, broadening through the mid-sternum, relaxing down through throat into the upper chest. For 3, 2, and 1, and come down. Roll over, and we'll come up into a standing position. Here's a place where you might want to use blocks or books on either side of your feet. So my ankles are just a bit behind the blocks. But we're going to do a forward fold like we usually do, so you can use the floor just as well, or you might have your hands on opposite elbows as you come down. This is possible without blocks. First, let's just stand in mountain. Feel the ground underneath your feet, the balls and the heels snug against the ground, reaching up through the arches, up through the inner thighs, feeling the hips just above the heels, the shoulders above the hips, a slight tuck in the chin as you relax down through the jaw and the throat and down into the area underneath the collarbones, those eyes of the shoulders. Breathe through the mid-sternum. The tail of the sternum quite relaxed, going down towards the navel. Inhale, arms up. And as you come forward, feel the torso quite long. As you bend forward, the tail of the sternum comes toward the belly button. Arms come down. Hands might come down to the floor or to the blocks. Feel the release of the spine in the lower area. The groins reaching up into the body. Bend the legs and come up. And we'll do that one more time. So reaching forward, long through the torso, broad through the mid-sternum. Lead with the mid-sternum. Tuck the groins into the body. And as you come down, let that tail of the sternum tuck in under, releasing the back of the spine. And come down just as far as is appropriate for your body. Knees can be soft here. For 3, 2, and 1. Bend the knees as you come up. Bring the arms down around so that the hands are resting on the hips. I'm moving to show you. You can stay in the same position. If you have blocks, have them a little bit in front of your feet now. We're going to come down again, but this time we're going to keep a bit of a back bend as we come down so that the mid-sternum will be quite open and this tail of the sternum will be more separated from the navel. Push down a bit gently through the hips as you reach up through the torso, long through the torso, leading with the mid-sternum. Relax through the jaw. Keep a distance between the tail of the sternum and the navel. Let hands come down, knees can be soft, to the floor or to blocks. Then, bending the knees, come back up. We'll do that one more time. Press down gently on the hips. Lift up. Lead with the mid-sternum. Distance between the navel and the bottom of the sternum. Knees soft as hands come down. Relax through jaw and throat. Releasing the shoulder girdle. Knees bend and you come up once again. We're going to come down into a downward dog now. We'll start with cat-cow. Hands are directly under shoulders and knees under hips. Inhale as the sternum slides forward. The stomach releases. Exhale as you arch the back. Be aware of leading with that mid-sternum as you open, relax through cheeks and jaw and mouth. Notice how the tail of the sternum moves up towards close to the navel as you arch your back. Then there's quite a distance between the navel and the tail of the sternum as you lead with the mid-sternum forward and come back through neutral. Now tuck the toes and come up into downward dog. You might pedal the legs a little bit. Inner elbows are facing each other. Feel the distance increasing between hands and shoulders. From the shoulders down through the sternum, distance as the navel draws away from the bottom of the sternum, and as the groins draw away from the navel. Sides of the body, spine getting longer and longer. And then we'll come forward into plank. Knees can be down if you wish. Energy coming out through the heels for 3, 2, and 1. Elbows close, knees come down. We'll come into Sphinx. Forearms are under shoulders, anchored through the hips and the front of the feet. Lead with the mid-sternum. Jaw is relaxed, gaze is soft. Allow the natural curves of the neck and the lumbar spine to be very graceful here. Now bring the hands back to about nipple line. Elbows are back along the side. We're going to do an up dog. Press down through the hands. Feel yourself getting long through the fronts of the legs. The arms grow long. Feel the distance increasing between the navel and the tail of the sternum. Lift the sides of the rib cage. Lead again with the mid-sternum. Relax down through lips and the top of the collarbone. And come down. We'll try that one more time. Pressing into the hands. Long through the arms, long through the rib cage, long through the fronts of the legs. Mid-sternum open, breathing out from the sternum and the tail of the sternum as rib cage breathes freely. Relax down through the throat so that the shoulder girdle is relaxed, and come back down. Now we'll come back onto our knees into a camel pose. And this can also be done standing up. We'll begin by bringing our hands to the hips. Press down lightly, lift up so that the mid-sternum is leading forward. Long through the torso as before, increasing that distance between the belly button and the bottom of the sternum as the mid-sternum starts to turn up in the direction of the ceiling, and then come back. Now we'll try it with one hand on the back of the sacrum, fingers down on one side, as the other arm reaches up. Lead with the mid-sternum, relax through the jaw. Hips stay over knees. And we'll try the other side. Giving support to the sacrum on one side, reaching up with the arm on the other. Reaching up through the mid-sternum, relaxing through the jaw. And coming back down. Both hands now on the sacrum area as we lead with the mid-sternum up towards the ceiling, long from groin to navel and navel up to sternum, and come back. We'll do it one more time. You might want to have a block or a blanket back behind you to have your hands, or you can bring your hands back to your heels. Start again by lengthening the torso up, preparing the body for this opening through the front of the torso. Mid-sternum turns up towards the ceiling. Relax down through throat. And come back up. Let the hips come down to the heels. Bring the hands back behind you. Palms are up and hands are clasped. We'll do yoga mudra. Raising the hips, raising the arms, feeling that xiphoid process, the tail of the sternum, turning down towards the navel, releasing the back, leading with the mid-sternum down towards the mat. And come back up. We'll do it one more time. Lifting up, careful of shoulders. Lead with the mid-sternum down towards the mat, and then tucking under a little bit more. Relax through the throat. And come back up. I'll come into downward dog one more time. Perhaps a little bit more opening now in the back of the legs. Arches coming a little bit farther down towards the mat. Reach back. Feel that upward air coming up through the rib cage and the sternum into the throat and mouth. Allowing this to be a very open pose. The sternum itself open and relaxed. Bring the left foot underneath the hips and raise the right leg. Push into the hands and foot, reach up. Then turn the tail of the sternum towards the navel a bit as the knee comes under the belly and comes through. Stretch back for a moment through the heel of the left leg. Then jumping forward just a bit, bring hands up to the knee and we'll come up to warrior one. The back foot is at between 30 and 60 degrees on railroad tracks. Turn the hips so that they're aligned towards the front of the mat. The right groin draws back into the body. The left groin comes down towards this back leg. Bring the hands onto the hips with the thumbs back on the sacrum back below. Helping the sides to lift up a little bit. Lift up through the tail of the sternum. Let that back leg be quite long. And as you raise your hands, lead through the mid-sternum. Relax through throat and jaw. Mid-sternum turning up towards the sky. And come back down. And one more time. Mid-sternum leads. Plenty of room between navel and the tail of the sternum. Relax through the jaw, throat, and come back down. Let hands come down to the mat. Feet come back together into downward dog once again. Have a nice stretch back, perhaps a little farther, hips coming to that wall behind you. Then let the right foot come under the hips, the left foot rises. Push into feet and hand up a little bit farther. Then letting that tail of the sternum come back towards the spine, arching the back, bringing the foot through. Stretch back through the right heel, opening in the right hip. Then stepping forward just a few steps and bringing that foot out just a bit. Rise up into warrior one. Hands are on the hips with thumbs back on the sacrum. Draw back through the left thigh and let the right thigh and the right groin come down towards that back leg. Bring the hands down, arch up, leading with the mid-sternum. Relax through the cheeks and the lips and the throat. And come back down. We'll do it one more time. Plenty of room here between the navel and the tail of the sternum. Lifting up through the mid-sternum, relaxing through collarbones and throat. And come back down. Bring hands back to the mat. And we'll come into a child's pose. Let it be a very relaxed child's pose as we end here. Let the forehead come down to the hands. You might arch up through the back just a little bit as a counter pose to those warrior ones that we were doing and the camels. Then bringing the arms along the side, come into what we call rabbit. Forehead or top, just the top part of the crown comes down to the mat. Nose tucks back towards the knees. And of course, the tail of the sternum is quite tucked in now. But even in this position, let the mid-sternum be a little broad and open to release the backbone. Hands come back onto the feet. Arch the back just slightly, coming into rabbit pose. Then inhale and release. And that's where we'll stop for today. It was good to practice with you. Keep breathing through the sternum and relaxing through the jaw. See you the next time.